The figure for sight loss is set to double because we're facing an ageing population, and sight loss is largely a function of age, I regret to say. As we get older, it's almost inevitable that our sight will deteriorate. And there's a double whammy in play here that as we age, we're also becoming increasingly susceptible to things like obesity and diabetes. And these factors are major triggers for sight loss. So we confront a population that's both aging and becoming more prone to the things which trigger sight loss. That's leading us to predict that the number of people with sight loss will double over the course of the next 30, 40 years. The most common types of type disease, the leading cause of sight loss in the UK or uncorrectable sight loss is something called age-related macular degeneration. This affects a very specialised part of the retina of the eye, where the central part of the vision is destroyed. And at the moment, there are very few treatments available to. There's no cure for this condition. There are treatments available for one form of the disease, which will stabilise it but not cure it. The other leading cause of sight loss is glaucoma, where undue pressure in the middle of the eye puts pressure on the optic nerve and causes damage to the optic nerve. In the working age population, there's a third disease called diabetic retinopathy, and this is a symptom of diabetes where the blood vessels at the back of the eye are damaged, and over 1 million people are thought to be at risk at the current time of suffering from this particular condition. Research into eye disease is important because at the moment we think it's critically underfunded. For very good reasons, of course. A lot of money goes into research into life-threatening diseases like cancer and diabetes. And the good and the bad news about eye disease, the good news is that it doesn't generally kill you. The bad news is that means it's less attractive in the main to research funding. We think this is unfortunate. We've been particularly successful at these interventions which extend people's lives by curing some of these life-threatening diseases. We think it's now time to change that paradigm shift into not only allowing people to live longer, but allowing them to live better. Just imagine what it would be like if as you grow older, that you couldn't drive. As your sight goes, you couldn't read. Perhaps you couldn't even see the television. And for a lot of people, perhaps most worrying of all, you might not be able to see your grandchildren grow up. Funding for research into eye disease is very important because it's an area where funding has been restricted. We take a fairly passive view, in my opinion, to going blind. People treat it as almost inevitable that their sight will deteriorate as they grow older. We question whether that's absolutely necessary and whether with sufficient research we couldn't overcome some of these things which cause sight loss. So that passive approach means that we accept, in a way, that people go blind. And if you look at the top 5 charities, the top 5 sight loss charities in the UK, they've got a combined income of £500 million a year, which they spend on the very valuable task of looking after and supporting people who have gone blind. But only about £10 million of that goes into actual eye disease research. Charities like mine are set up purely to invest in eye research. But we think the balance needs to be redressed slightly, and in order that fewer people in the future go blind, we need to up that figure substantially. Best way to get more information is to visit our website, and you can find that very simply by Googling National Eye Research Centre.